digital generation, with over 90% of all age ranges now owning a smartphone, and some of the world's most popular social media platforms having billions of users across the globe. There really is no getting away from the fact that we often live our lives through our phones. So why is it that despite technology allowing us to be more connected with one another than ever before, we actually feel more distanced from the people around us than ever? I personally believe that's down to the way we've become programmed to see social media as a society. We've become so set in the belief that social media is for sharing the good, the great, and the glamorous only, and that there is simply no place for sharing the darker and harder moments in life online. Social media has gained a really bad reputation over the last few years for being the reason none of us are truly happy with our lives. We've shifted the blame onto social media for the fact that we've all got body confidence issues. None of us ever feel like we're achieving enough. We never simply stop and enjoy the moment because we're too busy watching it through a lens, trying to capture it for our Snapchats. But technically, that isn't social media's fault. But luckily for us, as with any issue you cause for yourself, you're also the best person to fix it. Now, I want to share with you today my story of how I changed the way I was using social media to not just benefit myself, but others too. And I also want to share with you 4 simple things to keep in mind that will completely revolutionize the way you use the online world. Now, as with many big and small changes we make in our lives, this one for me started with a diagnosis from my GP. In June 2017, I was diagnosed with a condition called celiac disease, which is actually a lot more common than you may think. It affects around 1 in every 100 people in the UK, and unfortunately, there is no cure or prevention. It isn't an allergy or an intolerance. Celiac disease is an autoimmune disease in which the small intestine is damaged every time gluten is consumed. The only way to avoid and minimize symptoms of the condition is to stick to a strict gluten-free diet for the rest of your life. Now, as the only person in my family to be diagnosed with the condition, the only one of my friends to have even heard of it, and a teenager who had always done her best to fit in with the crowd and not stand out, it's needless to say that I felt isolated and embarrassed by the diagnosis. Now, I was very lucky that my family were extremely supportive in helping me adjust to my new diet and my new lifestyle. But as a teenager that had also suffered with depression and anxiety, I really did use celiac disease as another excuse to not socialise with my peers. So I did what any other lonely teenager would do, and I turned to social media. Now, at this point, I only had personal social media channels with a few hundred friends and followers, all of which were people that knew me in my real life. So, of course, I only shared the best parts of my world with them. So I started sort of silently following other celiacs online, particularly teenagers in the UK. I wanted to get food ideas, meal ideas, even coping strategies for socialising if I did ever decide to take the plunge. I loved the fact that it gave me a sense of anonymity, where I could become part of a community where I was unlocking advice and support, without having to put my hand up and say, I'm Ellie and I have celiac disease. So for about 6 months, I silently sat back, followed other people's accounts, and reaped the rewards of the content they were putting out. But eventually I decided I was ready to become a bigger part of this community. So I set up my own Instagram account called Gluten Free with Ellie. I started sharing my own food recommendations, meal ideas, tips and tricks that I'd picked up along the way for being a teenager with celiac disease. It was really opening my eyes to the fact that there was a whole new way I could use social media that was benefiting both myself and others more than a selfie ever had. Within 4 months, the account had gained 1,000 followers. Now, not only did this number feel like a massive milestone, but it was another reminder that the work I was doing online, opening up about something that I was once embarrassed about, was actually benefiting other people. Now, for the first few months, I didn't share it across any of my personal social media channels. I never shared pictures of myself. It was just a perfect feed of food photographs, which is exactly how I wanted it. I'd grown to enjoy this sense of anonymity that I'd grown over that account, where I could still talk about things that I was struggling with without really having to put my name to it. But in September 2018, my world was turned upside down and I was left with no choice but to be a bit more open and honest online. I went through a very sudden breakup of a 3-year relationship, and within 2 weeks, the person that I had dedicated the last 3 years of my life to was gone, living a life happier with someone else than he ever had with me. Now, at this point, I'd actually been living with him, so not only was the depression, anxiety, and eating disorders I'd suffered with as a teenager coming back, I also now had the added pressure of keeping a roof over my head, as well as dealing with the heartbreak that I was suffering with. I went completely radio silent on social media for about 2 weeks. I had absolutely nothing that I wanted to say, and I also wasn't eating, so as a food blogger, I actually had no content to post anyway. But I knew that I was going to have to get back to normality, but it just didn't feel right to go back to posting on social media like nothing had happened. Although my family and friends offline were supportive, I felt like none of them had been through what I was going through. So when they were telling me that this would get better, it would be okay, I just couldn't believe them. But I knew someone online would have been through the exact same thing. So I knew this community that I'd grown on social media that had always been there to support me were the right people to turn to. So I decided to post a picture of myself and explain exactly what had been happening. I wanted to be open and honest about how I had hit a mental health rock bottom. And although I was apprehensive about it, I was confident that this was the right thing to do. So for the first time on my Gluten Free with Ellie Instagram page, I actually posted a picture of myself. I knew this was a personal and emotive story, that although I did feel embarrassed about it, deep down I knew I didn't have to. So I wanted to use a picture of myself, own it, and use the caption as a space to explain exactly what had happened. But I was conscious that I wanted to do it in a sensitive and considerate way. And this is something that I want to reiterate throughout this talk, is that it's absolutely fine to talk about these harder moments in life online, but we've got to be responsible in the way we do it. I only wanted to share as much as I felt comfortable sharing, but I was also aware there had been some very dark and dramatic times throughout my breakup that anyone in a vulnerable state of mind may have found difficult to read. So it was about finding that balance about how I shared it. So although I knew I wanted to share it, I was still apprehensive. What if people were negative, judgmental? What if they just told me to get over it? So as soon as I posted it, I threw my phone screen down on the bed because I just wasn't sure I wanted to see what people had to say. But all my fears turned out to be completely irrational because all I was faced with was a flood of likes and comments and well wishes of people I didn't even know, telling me that this was normal, I would get over it, it would get better, but also other people going through breakups that were very similar, telling me they'd also hit a rock bottom with their mental health, and that they now felt less alone, knowing that there was someone else on their phone that understood. Once again, my eyes had been open to the fact that using social media in this authentic, open and honest way was more beneficial than sharing a picture of me on holiday. So I now had a lot more time on my hands and a real passion for using social media in this way. So I decided to channel a hobby that I'd always loved but had kind of put to one side for the last 3 years, and that was writing. I'd always had a dream of writing for Huffington Post, so I decided to start to work writing an article for them. And in November 2018, my first article for Huffington Post was published. I decided to start with a topic I felt quite comfortable talking about online now, and that was celiac disease. So I wrote the article raising awareness about the reality of the condition. It got published to the thousands of readers of Huffington Post, but the scariest thing for me was sharing it across my personal social media channels. Obviously, the people on my Gluten Free with Ellie account were thanking me for waving the flag for celiac disease, raising awareness and making people more aware of the reality. But this was the first time I'd really told people in my offline life that I had celiac disease. This made me different. This made me stand out. But the response was fantastic. People were thanking me for educating them and informing them about the condition. People were now more aware of symptoms within their own body that they should maybe get checked out. So I now had really caught the bug for talking about these harder to talk about topics online. I was realising more and more that there was such a benefit to doing this. So I continued contributing to Huffington Post, and I've since written articles on depression, disordered eating, dealing with a bad breakup, body confidence issues, and a whole host of other hard to talk about topics that we all suffer with, but all don't want to talk about. And each time I share these articles across social media, unlocking those conversations, getting people to talk about things that they really need to talk about. And each time the response is fantastic. People thanking me for giving them someone else that they can speak to, telling me they feel less alone because they didn't feel like they could talk to anyone in their own lives, but now there's someone new that they can tell. And this is what I wanted to share with you today, is that just because you're going through something in your offline life that you think isn't good enough for the social media world, it could actually benefit you and other people more if you do talk about it. but it's so important about the way we share it. Like I mentioned before, talking about mental health, physical health, and the harder times in life has to be done responsibly online. We have to take our own emotions and other people's into consideration as well. So I want to talk to you about 4 concepts that if you keep these in mind, you can never really go wrong with sharing online. So you can remember them by thinking of the word beat. Remember the fact that we're trying to beat this social media rut that we're stuck in. So B stands for balance. There is absolutely nothing wrong with sharing the good bits of your life online. I love seeing other people's holiday pictures, selfies, those funny pictures that get put up after an episode of Love Island. I love them as much as the next person. But we've got to show balance because none of our lives are perfect all the time. So if you're going to share the good, share the bad as well. Now, E is for education. If something you post online can teach someone something, then it is definitely of worth benefit posting it. So sometimes all you want to do is have a rant online, and that is absolutely fine. But we're all aware that sometimes just having a moan on social media doesn't get the best response. So if you can have that moan and cap it off by saying, but it's fine that I feel like that, because I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'll feel better. And if you're feeling the same, you can do those things too, and you might feel better as well. By doing that, not only have you got that weight off your own shoulders to a whole new world of people that are listening to you, you've also taught them how they could help themselves as well. Now, A is for aspiration. There is nothing wrong with thinking that you're doing well in life. We all have days where we think, yeah, I'm doing really well and people need to hear about this. Whether it's weight loss, job success, or another thing in your life that's just gone really well and you think by telling people you could inspire them to do well too. That is worth posting online, and it goes hand in hand with educating people. So don't just have a boast by post. Don't just upload your weight loss selfies. Don't just say you've had a promotion. Give people the key to your secrets. How have you done it? Inspire them to do what you've done and better their own lives. And T is for transparency. And again, this goes hand in hand with balance. If you're going to post online, if you're going to be online, then you've got to be open and honest. It's a standard we expect from the people online with higher followings, the YouTubers, the celebrities. We all expect them to be honest with us online, but us with a few hundred friends and followers, that doesn't apply to us. It does. You've got to be open, honest, and authentic online. If you post a false version of yourself online, pretending nothing ever goes wrong, pretending you're perfect, you make yourself untouchable. You risk making other people feel inferior because they can't reach the standards that you appear to be at. And you're also putting unnecessary pressure on yourself because you can't reach those standards either. Whereas if you're open, honest, and transparent online, you say when you've had a good day, but you also say when you've had a rubbish day, you make yourself real. You make yourself personable. People feel like they can relate to you. They can come to you. Your content is making someone else feel less alone. Social media was designed in the first place to help us build community. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of their main purposes is to help us connect, support, educate, and advise. And we've simply lost sight of that over deeming that we have to be perfect online all the time. So next time you're going to post something online, think about whether it is actually relevant to how you're feeling right now. Does it benefit anyone else what you're about to put online? And if it doesn't, maybe think about how you can reword it so that it does. And if you see someone else post something online about a struggle they've been through, don't just scroll past it. Stop. Read what they've put out. Think about how it makes you feel, how it's helped you. Can you comment? Can you offer advice, support? Can you message them privately saying you can really relate to what they've just said and thank them for putting it out there? By using social media slower, dropping our filters, and giving a more realistic version of our life offline, online, we can all get back to using social media in a far better way. Thank you.